You feel guilty when your weekend has no plans. You check your phone the second a room goes quiet. You call a friend not because you have something to say, but because being alone with your own thoughts for more than 10 minutes makes your skin crawl. Somewhere along the way, you started treating solitude like a punishment, something to be endured until someone rescues you from it. And that single belief might be costing you more than almost anything else in your life. You've been taught, without anyone ever saying it directly, that being alone means being unwanted. A full calendar looks like success. An empty one looks like failure. So you fill every gap, every evening, every silence, with noise, company, notifications, anything that proves to yourself that you're not sitting there alone. But the people throughout history who did their deepest thinking, made their hardest decisions, and became the most solid versions of themselves, almost all shared one uncomfortable habit. They spent serious time alone, on purpose, and they treated it as one of the most valuable things they could do with their lives. Start with the Stoics, because they built an entire discipline around this. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about the difference between being alone and being lonely, and it's a distinction most people never make. Loneliness is a feeling of lack, an ache for connection that isn't there. Solitude is a choice, a deliberate withdrawal so you can hear your own thoughts without static. Seneca said that most people can't stand their own company, and he considered this one of the clearest signs of an unexamined life. If you can't tolerate sitting alone with your own mind for an hour, that tells you something urgent about the state of that mind, not about the situation you're in. Think about the last time you were truly alone with no phone, no background noise, no distraction, just you and your thoughts. If that memory feels distant or uncomfortable to someone, you're not unusual. You've simply been trained, by an environment engineered for constant stimulation, to treat your own mind as something to escape rather than something to know. Marcus Aurelius, despite commanding armies and running an empire, protected time alone as fiercely as he protected anything else in his life. He wrote that people seek retreats in the countryside, by the sea, in the mountains, but that this kind of escape is available to you at any time, within yourself, if you're willing to actually go there. He wasn't talking about locking yourself in a room. He was talking about the ability to sit quietly with your own mind without needing an external distraction to make it bearable. For Marcus, this wasn't a luxury reserved for peaceful moments. It was a discipline he practiced especially when his external world was loudest and most chaotic, because that's exactly when the noise inside a poorly examined mind gets the most dangerous. You avoid this internal retreat because, if you're honest, sitting with your own thoughts sometimes surfaces things you'd rather not look at. Doubts about your choices. Old regrets. Questions about whether the life you're building is actually the one you want. It's far easier to drown all of that out with another episode, another scroll, another call. But avoiding your own mind doesn't make those questions disappear. It just delays them, and delayed questions tend to come back louder, usually at 2 a.m. when you have no more distractions left to reach for. Buddhism approaches this from a slightly different angle, but arrives at a strikingly similar place. Much of Buddhist practice is built around sitting alone with your mind, specifically because that's where you learn to see your own patterns clearly. The constant craving, the restlessness, the compulsive need for stimulation, all of it becomes visible the moment you remove external noise. This is uncomfortable at first, which is exactly why so few people ever do it long enough to get past the discomfort. But on the other side of that discomfort is something most people never experience, a mind that doesn't panic in silence, because it has finally gotten used to its own company. There's a reason meditation retreats, even short ones, tend to feel unbearably long for beginners and completely transformative for people who stick with them. The first hours are often filled with restlessness, itching for a phone, a conversation, anything. But that restlessness isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign of how dependent your nervous system has become on constant input. Solitude isn't punishing you. It's just finally showing you what was always underneath the noise. Nietzsche took this even further, treating solitude not just as useful, but as essential for anyone who wanted to become genuinely themselves rather than a reflection of everyone around them. He believed that your deepest, most original thoughts almost never arrive in a crowd. They arrive in isolation, when you're finally free from the subtle pressure to think, speak, and react the way everyone around you expects. He wrote extensively about needing solitude the way some people need air, not as an escape from life, but as the only space where he could hear his own voice clearly enough to know it apart from the noise of the herd. This matters more than it sounds like it should. Every opinion you hold, Every value you claim to have gets shaped constantly by the people around you, the content you consume, the culture pressing in on you from every direction. It's almost impossible to know which of your beliefs are actually yours and which ones you simply absorbed by osmosis, unless you spend real time away from all of that input, testing your thoughts in silence instead of constantly comparing them against everyone else's. Nietzsche didn't see solitude as antisocial. He saw it as the only condition under which a person could become someone worth being social with in the first place. Taoism offers a gentler version of the same idea. Lao Tzu wrote about the value of emptiness, using the image of a bowl, which is only useful because of the empty space inside it, or a room, which is only livable because of its empty interior. Applied to your own mind, this suggests that constant mental filling, noise, stimulation, distraction, actually makes you less useful to yourself, not more. An empty, quiet mind has room to actually hold something. A mind that's constantly crammed full has no space left to think clearly, notice anything new, or simply rest. You can test this yourself with something small. Try sitting somewhere quiet for 15 minutes with no phone, no music, no book, nothing to do but be there. Notice how quickly the urge to reach for something arises. Notice what thoughts surface once you stop feeding yourself constant input. Most people find this deeply uncomfortable the first several times. That discomfort isn't a signal that solitude is bad for you. It's a signal of how unused you've become to your own presence. There's a practical distinction worth making here, because solitude gets confused constantly with isolation, and they are not the same thing. Isolation is withdrawal driven by fear, avoidance, or shame, cutting yourself off from people because connection feels too risky or too painful. Solitude is a deliberate, chosen space you return from, refreshed and clearer, back toward the people and things that matter. The Stoics, the Buddhists, Nietzsche, none of them were advocating for permanent withdrawal from human connection. They were pointing out that the quality of your connection with others depends heavily on the quality of your relationship with yourself, and that relationship can only be built in moments where no one else is around to shape it for you. Think about the people you know who seem the most solid, the ones who don't need constant reassurance, who can sit through an awkward silence without scrambling to fill it, who make decisions without needing 12 people to weigh in first. Almost universally, these are people who spend real time alone, not because they dislike others, but because they've built a strong enough relationship with their own mind that they don't need external noise to feel steady. You can start building this without dramatically restructuring your life. Begin with small doses. Sit for 10 minutes in the morning before you touch your phone, just with your own thoughts. Take a walk without headphones and let your mind wander instead of filling every second with a podcast. Eat one meal a week in complete silence, paying attention to what actually comes up when there's nothing else competing for your attention. None of this requires isolation from the people you love. It requires reclaiming small pockets of time where you actually meet yourself, without anyone else, including a screen, mediating the experience. The discomfort you feel in those first few minutes of silence isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof of how rarely you've given yourself the chance to simply be present with your own mind, without racing to escape it. Seneca sat with this discomfort deliberately. Marcus Aurelius returned to it especially in his most chaotic moments. Nietzsche needed it to hear his own thoughts clearly enough to trust them. The Buddha built an entire path around learning to be at peace inside your own mind, without needing anything external to make that peace possible. You don't need a silent retreat in the mountains to start. You need 10 honest minutes today, with nothing to hide behind, and the willingness to notice what surfaces when the noise finally stops. Most of what you've been avoiding in silence isn't as frightening as the anticipation makes it feel. And on the other side of that discomfort is something almost nobody around you currently has: the ability to be completely alone and completely at ease at the exact same time.